to this computer. Okay, welcome to our December PeriClinic. Got lots of lovely experts here, and I'm going to ask you all to introduce yourselves. So, Helen, can we start with you?
Sure. I'm Helen. I'm based in Dubai. I'm from the UK originally. My training is in NLP, neuro linguistic programming, and I'm also a trained hypnotherapist as well as my menopause health training. And I mainly support women with the emotional side of menopause, the mood swings, the anxiety, the loss of confidence. And I also help with sleep as well. I'm not a trained sleep therapist, but I've done a lot of work on myself with sleep. So, and that is a question that often comes up as well, and it's one of the first things that I talk about. So yeah, most of my work is kind of on mindset and the emotional side of menopause.
Fab. Joe Douglas.
Hi, my name's Jo Douglas, as you just said, and I'm a holistic menopause wellness coach. So I cover all things holistically around improving symptoms. So that will include stress, sleep as well, nutrition, exercise, self-care, all the things we can do to help ourselves. So I coach ladies in a busy Facebook group for free, and then I do obviously paid one-on-one for ladies who want to work more closely with me. And I also hold retreats for midlife ladies in the south of Spain. The photos behind me. I've got one in May, which is fully booked, and looking to do more dates in the year, but I need to finalize those dates. So very exciting.
Fab. Sarah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Sarah Cosme. I'm a physical therapist or physiotherapist for those of you in the UK and a personal trainer. So I primarily only work with perimenopausal women, either helping them get into exercise if they're completely new. And my kind of big aim or focus is strength training. So getting gals into that. I really love doing that. And I also work with women if they have hip pain, back pain, shoulder pain on a one-on-one basis as well.
Amy.
Yeah, sorry, my internet connection isn't amazing, actually, I have to say. So if I freeze, apologies. So I'm based in the UK. I'm in South Oxfordshire, just near Newbury, sort of over the border into Oxfordshire. I'm a counsellor, integrative counsellor, and I was a midwife in a former life. And I support women through all the kind of aspects of mental health that women experience, really, sort of ranging from birth trauma through to menopause and beyond. And really sort of accepting those changes in your body at those really significant times in your life and what that means for you and your new identity as a person as well. And I've done a little bit of training recently with the British Menopause Society and CBT for menopause, but I'm not a menopause practitioner traditionally. So that's my little bit of extra that I've got sprinkled on top, but it's not my standard offering. So yeah, and been a PeriHub expert for, I think this is my second month. So very pleased to be here. Thank you.
Oh, Georgina.
Hi, I'm Georgina. My company is My Positive Menopause. I am a psychologist, and my approach is the strengths-based approach. So it's positive psychology, it's CBT. I do a bit of hypnotherapy, similar to Amy and Helen as well. So I work basically to support perimenopausal women and menopausal women. Again, similar, lots of stress and anxiety is one of my key focuses, but also bringing in that holistic approach. So working with sleep, because obviously it all very much links together. In a former life, I was a teacher. I love talking about former lives. I was a former teacher. So that's kind of my approach is very much getting people to become their own therapist as well. So teaching them, giving lots of psychoeducation and lots of information so people can really help themselves. And that's me.
Fab. And last but not least, Jo Jones.
Happy to unmute myself there. Hello, everyone. I'm Jo. I help Emily run PeriHub HQ. I'm also a psychotherapist and mindfulness teacher and a clinical medical hypnotherapist. And in my former life, since we're talking about former lives today, I have a history of running some big businesses. So I've kind of combined all of that into helping Emily run PeriHub HQ. And I also work, obviously, with women in perimenopause to help them understand their brains a bit better, to bring in some mind medicine tools, very similarly to Georgina and Amy and Helen, in terms of helping with the psychoeducation to take some of the scariness out of what's actually going on, help them understand in really simple process terms about, why we experience things the way that we do, what we can do about it, how we can, learn to regulate our nervous systems, all of that. And very much based on solution focus approach in terms of acknowledging and accepting really gently where you are right now, and then focusing on what it is that you actually want instead, and what that would be like if it was happening, and helping them to create that template for them in the version of themselves that they would actually ideally love to be. I'm in Bristol in the UK. Yeah, and that's a little potted nutshell of what we do.
Cool. And I didn't introduce myself. I'm Emily. I'm the Peri godmother. I just run this thing. I just turn up and talk. I'm not a psychotherapist or anything. Right. So this month, our topic loosely is stress, and I picked that topic for December because it's fairly obvious, isn't it? Because December, because Christmas, because the holidays, because all of that. But obviously, it expands out to something way wider than just Christmas. It just a lot of things sort of come to a head at this time of year. So if we're talking about, well, I think a lot of us are getting much more understanding of the fact that experiencing stress has a massive negative impact on our hormones. So I guess where we want to start this discussion is how we can reduce and minimize stress in terms of our response to it. I know we can't remove stress from the world. I am not that unrealistic. But I'm going to start with Amy because she's nodding beautifully.
Thank you.
So what would you think what would you suggest that we can do to just start to minimize stress at this time of year?
I think something that really strikes me from some client work I was doing the other day, we were talking about what might be over the coming couple of weeks. And we were talking about how that is for us, that we talk about what might happen. We go through the emotions of what might happen and how we're almost putting ourselves through it twice because of that. We are actually prolonging this experience of stress by preempting how it might be, if you see what I mean. And we were trying to break down, what the client has coming up, appointments, social events, things like that. And actually, okay, the appointments that you need to go to, but how can you make that less stressful? And actually, something that she did, which was a very useful practical thing, was changing face-to-face appointments to online appointments where she could, so that actually she cut out her whole journey, which was part of the thing that actually was stressing her more than seeing the person she needed to see. The other thing was the social events that she felt really under pressure to go to, actually, although she just wasn't feeling herself. She hasn't been feeling herself for quite a while. And we talked about, before you actually were at this stage in your life, do you think you really enjoyed those events, or was it something that you were actually feeling really under pressure to go to always? And I think that was really helpful, that, we do have these things sometimes we've got to do that are stressful. We know they're going to be quite stressful and we can't avoid them. But there are certain elements of it that we can ease. And how can we actually build a bit of a buffer around those things? And then there are other things like the social events that it's perfectly acceptable to say, do you know what, I really don't want to do that. it brings me no joy. So actually, this time I'm gonna bow out. Thank you very much. And how that could work. So yeah, that's the thing that really struck me was picking it apart a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Georgina, I'm sure you have some extra tidbits to add to that.
I'm nodding furiously, aren't
Yes.
I? That was brilliant. Amy literally said everything. As soon as you said stress, my first response was totally break it down into those jobs, prioritize. Even if it means I love lists. Oh, I love lists and I love highlighter pens and everything. Like, yeah, you and me, Emily, we're in the highlighter pen gang. But I love making a list of everything. And sometimes just that complete brain dump can take away half the stress. But then it's really useful to go through and start prioritizing, getting rid of things, really bump them down on the list. I find that really helps with stress, and it just kind of gets that mental load off. I find personally, I mean, everyone has their own strategies as well. So I am a list maker, but lots of people have different strategies with it as well. So it might be that something else that works for you. You might love a voice note, or you might love post-it notes, whatever it is that works. But the main thing is not to get stressed about being stressed. And
Yeah.
don't get stressed about trying new techniques to stop you getting stressed. So sometimes when I'm doing sort of little techniques with people, people can say, "Oh, I don't think I'm doing that right. I don't think I wrote my list right, and I don't think I've prioritized this correctly, or I don't think whatever." So just there's no right or wrong. It's whatever works for you.
That's so true. And yes, we can so easily add stress on top of stress by trying to manage stress. I don't know how many times I can put that word into one sentence. Helen, anything you'd like to add here?
I don't think anything new, but same as Georgina, I'm very much now in the habit of making lists. In my previous life, I was a super admin freak, and everything had to be in order, and I had lists and lists and lists. And now I do that in my own life as well. So yeah, I think setting boundaries as well. I think it can be really difficult for us to do that, and I struggle with that as well. But absolutely, if there's something that you've got a choice of to do or not to do and you don't want to do it, then don't do it, and don't stress about it. I know it's really difficult, and there are lots of things that we kind of have to do because it's part of life or work and things like that. But where you can start to set boundaries, start slowly, start small with sort of inconsequential things, and then you'll get into the habit of being able to say no to things. I try to do that as much as possible. The social events, especially, I don't get stressed out now. If I don't feel like going an hour before, then I won't go. But it used to really stress me out, and I used to go, not enjoy it, and moan about it afterwards. So it is difficult. But yeah, I think setting boundaries would be one of the other things.
So I'm going to run with boundaries, and I'm going to go to Jo Jones.
Can you see me nodding?
Yeah, and I know you like the topic of boundaries.
You know I love a boundary. Do you know what? There's 2 times a year that I do major boundary work with women, and one is just before the summer ramps up, and the other one is in December or late November, early December. And I do boundary workshops with some amazing women who are beautiful, powerful, sensible, intelligent, wonderful women who really struggle to say no to anything. And we dig into why that is and all of the kind of psychology behind it and the tribal stuff going back hundreds of thousands of years and why we needed that sense of safety and inclusion and all of it. And it transpires that it's something that we can practice. It's something, exactly as Helen said, we can start really small with just saying, thank you for inviting me, but I'm going to say no, that doesn't work for me. I hope you have a lovely event. The learning it's like a skill we need to develop and learn. We just don't inherently have it because we have this kind of conditioned response to be nice and to be good people and be going to the social events and all of that, which doesn't actually mean anything when you break it down. So yeah, the boundary workshops right now are so powerful. And it really just starts with having a few stock responses that help you. And one of the best ones that I've heard recently was, "Oh, thank you. Let me think about that and I'll come back to you." it's just so soothing just to be able to go, oh, thank you. You're acknowledging and buying yourself some time, buying yourself some space, not feeling put on the spot to immediately say yes to things. And it's about choosing that short-term discomfort over longer-term resentment.
My go-to in that situation is, oh, I'd love to. Might be a small white lie. Let me check the diary. Lovely sense of space. What does my diary say?
My diary says I'm sitting on the sofa in my PJs.
My diary says there's a new series of Emily in Paris that I haven't yet watched. That's what my diary says. Joe Douglas, anything you'd like to add about boundaries and saying no and helping reduce stress in that respect?
I feel like I've got deja vu because I had this exact conversation this morning. It's like word for word. I was talking to a lady about boundaries, and she was like, she's inundated with all these invitations, and she said yes to, and she's like, I don't know how to get out of them now. So we had a conversation about, first of all, how she needs to learn to say no, and exactly what you ladies have just said. I said to her, next time someone asks you to do something, before you open your mouth and go yes, go just pause for a second. Give yourself time to say exactly what you just said, Emily. Oh, when I get home, I'll check my schedule. I know it's already busy at the moment, but I'll see if that time's free and I'll get back to you. So exactly that. So she's like, oh, why didn't I think of that? It's so simple. So now she's got the task of looking at the ones she all said yes to, and she's going back and she's going to leave voice notes and say, I'm really sorry I said yes, that I'm coming for this. I didn't think about it. I looked at my schedule and I've realized I've double booked and I can't get out of the other one. I'm really sorry, but thank you anyway for thinking of me. So exactly that. So she's got that. She's getting all stressed about now doing that, but she'd rather do that than go to these events that she has no desire to go to whatsoever. Yeah. And she's working on that boundary, exactly like Joe said. It's a huge thing for women, isn't it? And we just feel like we have to please everyone all the time. I mean, I've learned I say no quite a lot, and then often wish I said yes.
It's now one of my favourite things to say no. I love it.
Fear of missing out. And then I see Facebook posts, I was like, oh, damn, I should have said yes to that one. But yeah, no, it's funny how we work, isn't it?
Yeah. Dr. Sarah, I'm going to go on a slight tangent with you. Coming at this from the sort of physical therapist side of things, what's stressed into our bodies? Where do people start getting aches and pains when they are stressed?
Yeah, so stress definitely has an impact on pain. You know, in the last, I think, 20 years, there's been a lot of study in the understanding of pain and why some people might have prolonged pain based on, depending on whatever musculoskeletal issue they have. They should be better by now, but they're still having pain. And they find that stress is probably one of the more key reasons why some people might have pain for a longer period of time. So I just was working with my client last week, and she, on top of holiday stress, she was moving to a new house in like a different part of the state. And her husband was working, he got a promotion and was working a lot longer hours. So she was kind of forced to do a lot of the packing and all of that stuff on her own. And she started to develop kind of that sciatic pain on one side. And she was kind of like, oh my God, did I cause this? What's going on? She's like, I'm just really freaking out. And we just had to have kind of a step back moment where I kind of reassured her that she didn't cause her sciatic pain. This is a lot of new things that are happening, stressful things that are happening. You just kind of were doing a lot of stuff in a short period of time. And the fact that you're really getting stressed out about this and figuring out how you're doing this on your own is probably why this kind of popped up a little bit. I gave her a couple exercises. And then the other thing where we talked about is what's one thing you can do in the moment where you feel like you can just step back for a couple minutes, just kind of find your center and then attack the problem at hand. So, I suggested to her meditation, but for her, she was like, I don't really like meditation. She's like, it's really hard for me to clear my mind. So I said, okay, let's not do meditation. she kind of came up with her own brilliant solution, which was she knows like 2 or 3 songs where she can't help but sing to the lyrics. Like that's what she likes to do. So I said, okay, I want you to put those 2 to 3 songs on. I want you to sing, dance, kind of step away from whatever you need to be doing. And then, after those couple, 2, 3 songs is like what, 4 or 5 minutes, 6 minutes. You're not going to get any, you're not losing a ton of time by, taking a step back for 6 minutes and then come back and attack the problem. And she was really excited about that because that is something that she felt like she could do. And she's always had trouble with meditation. And so, stress can definitely impact us in our body in ways that we don't understand, or we're kind of like, why is all this pain hopping up? I'm seeing a lot of posts on HQ about why is all this pain all of a sudden coming back? And I think part of it is stress around this holiday time. So, people, Emily also talked about where people typically get stressed. You're hearing a lot of like tension headaches, necks, shoulders, and low backs and hips. Those are kind of typically where stress seems to kind of manifest itself in a physical place.
I do need to know what the 2 songs were.
Oh, she didn't tell me what the songs were, but I should have asked her. But I was like, yeah, girl, play those.
Georgina, I'm going to put you on the spot now. Going a bit deeper into the sort of psychological stuff, what's happening to our body when we're stressed?
Oh, that's a good question.
I've gone big. I've gone all in.
That is a really good, my goodness, you've totally put me on the spot there. What's happening in our bodies? Okay. Body. In our mind, I'm going to focus on the mind for this one.
Okay, cool.
So when we're stressed, there's an awful lot going on when we're stressed, but a lot of the time, like Sarah brought up with the meditation. So there can be a lot of thoughts kind of going on all at once. And it's very difficult. I'm not going to answer your question at all here, I think.
That's fine.
I think I'm going to go off on a different tangent.
I like a tangent.
I'm going off on a tangent. But when we're thinking about doing the mindfulness and kind of just taking your mind off those stressful thoughts, it can kind of everything can come in on ourselves. And we get this feeling that these thoughts that we have are basically just stories that we tell ourselves. So your mind makes up lots of stories, and some of them are really helpful and they help you get on with stuff. And some of them are very unhelpful and they don't help you get on with things and they cause stress. So one of the little techniques that I use is to kind of get people to think that thoughts aren't facts. So whatever you're thinking isn't necessarily true. I've gone off a complete tangent here.
Fine, go with it. I like it. I like a tangent.
Well, the things that we think aren't necessarily true, and taking a step back from it and kind of doing a more evidence-based, analytical, objective look at how you're thinking about things can really help to reduce that stress. So asking yourself questions, things like, is there any evidence or is there anything to support what I'm thinking here? Is there anything that contradicts it? So am I thinking, let's think of a stressful thought. Hold on, let's give it a good example. So, I've got so many things to do and I can't do any of them. That's a good one. So first one, when we have these thoughts, we tend to make them very personal. We tend to personalize, catastrophize, and generalize as well. So making everything big. So when we talked about breaking things down into smaller segments, that kind of fits into this as well. But it's taken away that personalness and kind of thinking, is there any evidence to support this? Is it realistic? Is what I'm telling myself realistic? Because that can cause a lot of stress as well. That can make ourselves. And am I being particularly negative about it? So is there a more balanced way to view what I'm saying, or have I just made this into something that it's not necessarily what it is? But my favorite one of these ones, it's nothing to do with the question that you asked me. My favorite one of these ones is, if you had a friend that came up to you and said what you're thinking, what would you say to them? Or if your child came up to you, or friends, whoever came up to you and voiced those thoughts that you're having about themselves, what advice would you give them? And generally, that's a really good way to kind of bring yourself back into the real world and de-stress those situations.
Yeah, and that also the what evidence is there for this is a really good one when we get caught up in a spiral of trying to be a perfectionist and therefore procrastinating. You know, what evidence is there to say I'm going to fail when I do X, Y, and Z? Or the sort of three in the morning chatter that tells you all sorts of terrible things about yourself. What evidence is there?
Yeah, it's taking that step back as well is so useful, and just having those kind of reframing all your thoughts. Nothing to do with what's going on in the body. I can't even remember what question you asked me. I'll let someone else take that one up.
So, Jo Jones, what's going on in our body when we're stressed?
Sorry.
I'm glad you asked. Stress is our survival brain's opinion of how much danger we're in. How much stress registers with us depends on what our limbic system feels our chances of survival are likely to be. Now, we've got a few key bits here. We've got a bit in the middle, which is the alarm button that goes off every time there's a stimulus, whether or not we view it as positive or negative, it's still a stimulus. This little alarm button goes off, our amygdala. And that references into our hippocampus, which is like our template library for everything we've ever experienced in our lives, ever, no matter what we've smelt, done, experienced, heard, felt, all of it. And that then references in with this other bit called your hypothalamus, and that's the bit that is like the pharmacist of the brain that starts to decide, based on those other two bits, what kinds of neurotransmitters it wants to start chucking out into your bloodstream. And that is what affects our sense of the physiology, what actually goes on in our body, what we're noticing, our heart rate increasing, our stomach churning, our blood beginning to pump like we're about to go into some sort of crisis situation. And we start to, your stomach might churn, you might start to feel like you're going to pass out, all of those things. This brain, this neuronal activity, combined with this rush of neurotransmitters, whether it's, we're having a great time or a really rubbish time, really impacts on what we then get to experience in our nervous system, what we then really experience as our very physical and real symptoms. And of course, in perimenopause, this is all disrupted by the fact that our hormones, in terms of our declining progesterone, our fluctuating mental estrogen levels, and testosterone being all over the place, what would normally be a relatively smooth neurotransmitter process gets massively disrupted. We get cortisol spikes all over the place for absolutely no reason. So we might normally regulate in a certain way, and that's even harder in perimenopause. So a lot of the tactics and skills we might have had in terms of cognitively talking ourselves through a problem at some earlier point in our life, that can go out of the window too. So this can feel really challenging. And I think a lot of women, we see it in the big group, a lot of women are really struggling with handling stress. We handle stress very differently in perimenopause. And that becomes really quickly apparent.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my potted version of what goes on in the body. And what we can do about it actually is some really simple techniques. I think one of the things that hacks into it really quickly, particularly in perimenopause, are much more somatic techniques, rather than trying to rationalize our way out of a situation with the cognitive processing, which feels like it's just gone. Sometimes we kind of need to have some hacks to be able to get back into that nervous system reset. So somatic work, breath work, touch work, sound work, whatever it needs to be to incorporate the other senses to bring ourselves back into the sense of body and that internal sense of safety. We know that there's the bio-physio mental loop. My words have just failed me there for a second. We have this biofeedback loop, basically, that our brain influences our body influences our brain. And so we can bring ourselves back into this felt sense of regulated safety pretty quickly when we've got some tools to be able to do it.
Amy, I know, and this sort of carries on from what Jo was saying about us seeing a lot of people in the main Facebook group really feeling like their stress levels have just gone stratospheric. Do you see this, like, where people have, prior to hitting perimenopause and their hormones changing, they've always been kind of pretty chilled about stress, and then suddenly it's just inching up on them. What are things what's going on, and how can we kind of get our stress resilience back down?
Yeah, so one of the things that I like to kind of discuss with my clients is about, Joe mentioned it earlier, about the autonomic nervous system. And for some people, it is really sort of reassessing what those triggers are, because as you move into perimenopause, they will change. And like you were saying, things that you were fine with before, for example, and one of the things we see so much of is women in their workplace feeling like, why can't I cope with this now? I was fine with this, and now suddenly I can't stand up in front of people. I don't want to answer questions. I don't feel confident in what I'm doing. And things like driving as well. What is, they're losing confidence in stuff that actually they felt really good about before and has always been just, second nature to them. And it's about kind of understanding what your autonomic nervous system is doing. And, you're at times going into, there's basically three different states. And I'm not an expert on this, and I know Joe would explain this so much better than I would. Um, so there's the dorsal state, which is basically where you're quite immobilized, and that's you're kind of frozen. I can't think. They've asked me something. I don't know. I don't know what to say. Oh God, now I feel really on the spot. Now I'm really stressed. I can feel myself getting hot. This is uncomfortable. What do I do? I can't connect my thoughts. And then there's the sympathetic system, which is where you're like, actually, oh God, I want to run away. Now this is terrifying. I can't cope with this. I don't know what to say. And then there's the central vagus system, which is where you're feeling comfortable. And the key thing about that is your mind and body feel quite connected. You're feeling quite calm, and your thoughts are coming naturally, and they're feeding back through, and you're doing what you need to be doing. And that's what we lose, is that ability to sort of say, okay, I've done this before. It's not making my heart rate go up. I'm getting sweaty, and I can connect to the thoughts that I need. Yes, exactly. I know this process. I'll explain it to them. I've done it a million times before. And so it really is about reassessing what your triggers are. Where do you go? Which state do you go into when people put things onto you? For example, when you get in the car, are you wanting to think, I don't want to do this. I want to get out. I want to get out. I want to do anything other than drive a car today. I'll get the train. Someone else can drive. Is that your fight or flight? Is that what you're going into? And how can you break that down and work out, actually, how can I reprocess this so that I'm in a more calm, central state to do it? And at work, am I frozen? Why am I doing that? What's causing that? And it's about sort of understanding those triggers. But it's not easy, because obviously with fluctuating hormones and the progression, that changes as you're going along as well. And so as you're starting to get on top of it, it might change again. So it's about that sort of adaptation and being able to say, I really appreciate what my body's doing right now, and I can understand. And so I will accept that there might be days where I don't feel great about doing certain things. And so I'll need to kind of think, my strategies will have to adapt. And yeah, a big part of it is that feeling that you can't make yourself be your 20 or 30-year-old version of yourself. You are what you are right now, and what you are next week might be different, and what you are next year will be different. And how can you accept that and work with it? Long answer, sorry.
No, I love that. So what I'm kind of hearing from that is self-acceptance and self-kindness kind of underpinning the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
So Joe Douglas, on a holistic level, how can we start being kinder to ourselves and more accepting of ourselves so as to reduce this stress?
Well, I love the way Joe talked about bringing yourself into the present moment and regrounding yourself. And I do that with a lot of my clients. So the senses, using all the senses. So if you feel like Amy just described, a sensation coming on as like, oh my God, I really can't do this right now, you could take yourself away to the bathroom, bring yourself back to the present moment. So I use a technique a lot of what 5 things can I see? So I can see a wall, I can see my computer, I can see my drinks bottle. 5 things. What 5 things can I feel? I can feel my desk. I can, you get the gist. What 5 things can I smell? My deodorant, or maybe not my deodorant, maybe my BO, depending on what time. So using your 5 senses like that can bring you back to the present moment and stop you thinking about what is actually stressing you at the time. And then add to that the breath work. Box breathing is great. It's a good quick one to be able to do anywhere and bring you back into the moment. So then you may be able to go out and then do what you've just run away from. But again, like Amy said, it's about accepting as well, what you just reiterated. You might bring yourself back to the present moment and not feel so stressed anymore, but then you might make the decision, right, I'm not going back there, except that does trigger you. So, okay, I'm going to go and do something different. I'm going to go and talk to my manager, or I'm going to talk to whoever it is that I need to talk to say that at the moment I can't do this. So that's another way of self-acceptance as well. And the whole thing about the breath work and the meditation, and it's like Sarah said, her lady is not very good at meditation. And I know lots of ladies, they say, I can't do meditation. All I can think about is what dishes I've got to wash. So guided meditation, the music thing I think is fantastic, but a guided meditation is also really good. So you're concentrating on listening to the voice in the meditation rather than listen to all the things that's going on in your head. So that's a really good one to use as well at sleep time. But the other thing with stress, we talked about all the mental things, but it also, with your fluctuating hormones, it also brings on more physical symptoms. So if you get in hot flushes, it's going to make your hot flushes worse as well. All those things that we, deal with through menopause, the whole stress syndrome is going to make it worse. So I always say to my ladies, first and foremost, we need to look at your sleep. And we need to make sure that we've got that sleep hygiene in place. It's really important, because without your 7 hours minimum of sleep, then your stress levels are going to be higher. Your cortisol could kick in the middle of the night. And what helps cortisol kick in are your blood glucose levels. So that's where we need to watch what we're eating. So that's where we make sure we're having enough protein, we're eating healthy fats, we're eating enough greens, we're getting all our magnesium and everything that we need into our diet, which is going to help us sleep, which is going to help lower that cortisol shoot because of our blood sugar levels. And then if we're getting 7 hours of sleep a day, we're more likely to be able to put all the other tools that we're learning into place, because we're not tired and trying to keep our eyes open all day. So we're more likely to get out and walk, which is going to help our stress levels. We're more likely to make better choices in our food because we're not feeling tired. Because when you're tired, you just grab the first thing, the closest thing, especially at Christmas time, when everywhere's full of mince pies and chocolates and all the rest of it, which is fine. We don't want to be restrictive. We want to enjoy Christmas food. But we have to be mindful that if we're going to overindulge in that, it's going to have the reverse effect, and our stress levels are going to be all the rest of it. So instead of having that vicious circle downward spiral, we want to try and make that spiral to come up. So if we start with sleep and we work on small steps forward in improving everything else, then we can work on our stress levels and we spiral up rather than spiral down. And I know that sounds very simple and it's a lot harder than it sounds, but small steps, I say, and encouragement. Lean on people, talk to your colleagues, talk to your husband, talk to your kids. I'm feeling this way right now. I could use your support. Ask for help. I was talking to another lady this morning actually about feeling like you're responsible for doing everything over Christmas and no one helps you. But then I said to her, do you ask for help? And she went, well, no, they should offer. They're not going to offer. Your teenage kids aren't going to offer. Your husband's not going to offer. My husband said to me, if you don't ask me, I'm not going to do, because I think you're all right. Men need asking, they need telling, not asking. They need telling. Darling, I'm doing this. Can you go and do that, please? They'll go, yeah, sure. They're always happy to help. Well, the majority are. But you got to ask them, because if you don't ask them, they think you rather not have the help and want to get on with it on your own. They just assume you're fine. So lean on the support of the groups, like your group, my group, your friends, your colleagues, your partner, all of it. So that's my holistic way of getting through the festive season. Small steps, don't put too much pressure on yourself, have your boundaries, ask for help, breathe, ground, sleep. I make it sound simple, I know it's not, but if we take those small steps forward, then we can get through this season and hopefully have a jolly one rather than a miserable one.
Absolutely. Helen, have you got anything you'd like to add on top of what Joe's just said?
I don't think anything different, but I probably would have said exactly what Joe's just said. For me, it's been my focus for the last year. And my sleep's always been a little bit up and down, but it got particularly bad at the start of this year. And so sleep for me is the big one. And like you said, Joe, these things are not easy. It sounds easy. You say to someone, make sure you get 7 or 8 hours sleep. Make sure you don't look at your phone before you go to bed. Make sure you get sunlight in the morning, go for a walk, don't watch TV, do meditation, breathing. It all sounds a bit wishy-washy, but it actually does work. It takes a bit of practice. But yeah, for me, absolutely sleep. And going back to, I think what Amy was saying as well about accepting that where you are now is not where you were 5 years ago, 2 years ago, and accepting and acknowledging the fact that your body now deals with stress differently to how it did before. So, and I think Joe, you were saying that what you used to use for managing your stress might not work now. So you need to try some other different techniques, and what everybody's suggested are all what I would have said as well. But box breathing, I do that. And at night time, if I wake up, I can't get back to sleep, I do the body scan, and I always find that helps me get back to sleep. And I know you can do that during the day if your environment allows you to do that as well. But I think the big one as well for me, what you said, Joe, is asking for help and asking for support. And I am terrible at that, despite what I do and despite what I know, I'm absolutely terrible. I just plow through and get upset or get annoyed and get stressed and don't ask for help. But absolutely, people will help if you ask for help. You need support. You can't do it all on your own. There's so much going on, regardless of menopause. There's so much going on with life and kids and parents and work and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, just reaching out for support for me is second biggest one.
Awesome. Okay, one other angle quickly to look at, and then I will ask each of you for a tip and we'll wrap it up. Sarah, exercise as a way of managing stress.
Fantastic. I think, I can't remember the study's name, but they actually coined a term called hope molecules, which happens when we start exercising. We kind of activate these hope molecules. And what it does is it gives us more resiliency to kind of address stress, or it gives us a way to kind of step away. And a lot of things, one of the reasons why I also kind of am really pro strength training is because strength training teaches you that things that you thought maybe like, oh, I don't know if I can lift that, I'm not sure if I can do X reps of that, and you do it and you surpass your expectation. It's almost like evidence to yourself that you can do hard things. And it gives you that little bit of hope and that little bit of just evidence, and just kind of showing yourself that, yes, I can do hard things. And if I do hard things, the effort kind of shows me that it's important for me to do. So that's why exercise is so huge, and why I'm such a proponent of exercise, because it really, when you start exercising, you start sleeping better, you start wanting to make better choices with your food. It just kind of jump starts everything, and it makes you more proactive, and it kind of makes you step back and think, how can I improve this thing? How can I improve that thing? And I think the biggest kind of advice that I like to tell people, or especially people who maybe weren't super consistent with exercising, even in their 20s or 30s, or was never an athlete, or kind of always had this yo-yo thing with exercise, is especially during the holiday season, just when you wake up in the morning, think of what's one thing that I can make myself 1% better today? Whether it's adding an extra serving of vegetables, whether it's going for a 10-minute walk, it doesn't have to be something super hard or super challenging to implement in the holiday season. It can be something simple as small things, because when you prove that you can do this to yourself, it kind of ignites that motivation, and that action kind of just propels you and pushes you forward to make better choices, to make choices that more align with the type of person you want to become.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to round up with, I'd like one tip from each person about overcoming or managing stress, particularly at Christmas. I'm going to start with Jo Jones.
Oh, blimey. Good job I was ready. Right, okay. My one top tip. Actually, I'm going to invite you to do it with me.
Oh, go on then.
Okay, just close your eyes and just take a hand and place that hand gently or firmly just below your collarbone across your chest. And then I just invite you to just silently think to yourself, I am a good woman having a tough moment. This is what it feels like to struggle. This is a moment of struggle. It's normal to feel this way at times. May I be kind to myself. May I notice my breathing. May I notice this passing. I'm safe. And then open your eyes. That's my top tip.
Okay. Where do we go from there? Oh my God. Amy, I'm sorry, I'm gonna put the pressure on you now.
Oh gosh, no pressure. That was so nice, Jo. Love that. I think the thing that really springs to mind for me is thinking about what you can and can't control, because this is a time of year, especially when you have a lot of people coming into your home or going to their homes, that they might have different habits or different values to you. And something that really springs to mind is a few years ago, I was getting really frustrated with my mum actually coming round, and she's a smoker. And she would go into the garden and she'd put her cigarettes out in our gravel. And it really, really annoyed me. And I got in such a mood about it. And I was thinking, oh, it's so rude, just stubbing her out on the gravel. And then I started to think, okay, what can I do to actually, she's not going to stop smoking. She's 74. She's not going to stop smoking now. And I want her to come round and see us and see her grandkids. So I bought her an ashtray and put it outside. And it's that kind of thing that I just think sometimes you've got to think, what can I control? What can't I control? And really pick your battles, because there are challenges with people that we see at this time of year sometimes, and their habits are a little bit grating. And it's how can you make it easier for yourself without really stressing yourself out?
I think, yeah, picking your battles is such a huge thing. Georgina, what's your one tip for us?
Firstly, I'm worried about why I've gone so blurry. But
Oh no.
oh, something terrible's happened. Okay, my one tip. We've talked about triggers before. I want you to think about your glimmers. So the glimmer is an opposite of a trigger. So triggers are the things that make you annoyed. Glimmers are the things that make you happy. It's quite new in the world of positive. Well, new, like Harry Potter's a new film. But anyway, there's so find your glimmers. So spend when you feel in those moments of stress, rather than thinking, oh, that's something that really annoys me, that's totally my trigger. Just spend a bit of time thinking, right, what are my glimmers? What makes me happy? What makes me feel joy? And it doesn't have to be anything big. It can be that someone's made you a cup of tea, or that you've got a lovely warm blanket on your lap, or that your thing's gone all blurry and maybe you'll refocus in time, but perhaps not immediately. But just finding those little things and not kind of shifting your mindset into the positive. Because every time you can shift it into the positive, that just really helps with the stress and getting caught up in that negative thought cycle, reframing everything and just focusing more on the positive. So glimmers are my top tip.
Love it. Joe Douglas, what is your top tip?
I was going to say gratitude, but I guess that's very similar to what Georgina just said. I was going to say write down like a few things that you're grateful for, which would be a glimmer, wouldn't it? So instead of saying that, I'm going to say boundaries. Learn to say no. And if you haven't said no yet, or you've already said yes and wish you'd have said no, be brave enough to go back and send them a message or a call if you're brave enough. If you're not brave enough, a voice note to say, sorry, you double booked, didn't mean to, hope you have a lovely time. So my top tip is to learn to say no.
So, Helen, what's your top tip?
I think I would say make some time every day for yourself, even if it's just 15 minutes at the start of the day, middle of the day, so you have a break, end of the day, wind down before you go to bed. Even if you have to put it in your calendar, set an alarm to take some time off, just go read a book for 15 minutes, listen to an audio book, do some breath work, do some meditation, whatever it is that you do, a dance, listen to some music, whatever it is that you enjoy doing and you know that helps either lift your mood, lift your spirits, or gives you a bit of stress relief. Just take some time every day and it will become a habit. Then it'll be something that you just naturally do. At first, it might seem a bit strange, a bit alien. You don't have time to do this, but everybody's got 15 minutes. So that would be what I would say.
Okay. Sarah, what's your one tip?
I think my one tip is everyone's provided so many wonderful tips to try. And so, if you're listening to this and you try something and maybe it doesn't work, or you're like, oh, that didn't work, trying to view it as, okay, now this was the failure was an opportunity to learn that this didn't work for you. So now let's try something else. So just having that open mind and being patient with yourself, because like everyone has said, you're a different person than when you were 20, when you're 30. So you're on this journey to kind of figure out who you are right now and trying to find what works for you. What might work for person A might not work for person B. So being patient and viewing this as okay, that didn't work, so let me put that there. But now it's another chance to find something that does work.
Fab. I've got one top tip to add as well, which is that certainly specifically for Christmas and stuff, if you know that there is a family member who is coming to a gathering that you're going to, who can be, shall we say, incendiary with their maybe political or religious views, and you know that those views go against everybody else, and you know that that person is stoking for an argument. We all know that person, by the way. I mean, yeah. For yourself, I'm not saying do this at large, make a little game of it, have a little bingo sheet, acknowledge that that person is going to say those things that hit all of your buttons and make you want to argue, but acknowledge that you can go and cross them off and you can get yourself your bingo sheet rather than rising to it and adding to your own stress and unhappiness. It becomes a game, it becomes silly, it becomes something that you can you've got control of it again.
I love that. You get a point
Good
every
idea.
time you say the thing. I love that.
And at the end you get chocolate. So, I mean,
Yeah, don't turn it into a drinking game though, because you'll probably die.
Oh God, no, because then you'll definitely have the argument.
Just you get a point or a gold star, a star every time they say the thing, or yeah.
Exactly. And if you've got kind of siblings or whoever that you can kind of have in on the game, but quietly, it takes the power away from that incendiary situation. Anyway,
good idea.
On that note, thank you all so much for your time, and we will be back in January with another PeriClinic. I will be sending out contact details of each of the experts who have been here to everybody for the replay, and I don't know yet what January's topic is going to be, but I will announce that once I do. And have a lovely Christmas, everybody, and don't get stressed.
Thank you. Merry Christmas,
Thank you.
everyone.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Merry Christmas.